I know this sounds like something out of a movie. Honestly, if I wasn't the one living it, I'd think it was all bullshit too. But what happened to my daughter, what I went through trying to get her back, still doesn't feel real. It's been 2 years since I last saw her smile before everything went to hell. And even now, I still wake up hearing her scream in my head. My name's Ryan. I'm 34 from Oregon. My daughter, Ellie, turned 6 last year. Or would have turned 6, I guess. I still can't say that sentence right. She was my whole world after her mom left us when Ellie was just a baby. I won't pretend I was perfect. I was young, broke, and scared out of my mind half the time. But Ellie made me try harder. She made everything worth it. It started the way most nightmares do, normal. Just a regular Tuesday. I dropped her off at preschool. She hugged my neck and kissed my cheek like she always did, whispering, "Love you, Daddy," before running inside. I still remember her little backpack bouncing on her shoulders, the pink one with the unicorns. That image used to make me smile. Now it's the thing that kills me a little more each time it flashes in my head. When I came back that afternoon, the teacher looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. "She was picked up already," she said. "By your sister." I don't have a sister. At first, I laughed. I thought it was a mix-up. Then she showed me the sign-out sheet with a signature that looked vaguely like mine. And that's when my stomach dropped. I called 911 before I even made it to the car. They found the security footage 2 hours later. A woman in a long beige coat, dark sunglasses, and a scarf covering half her face. She walked with confidence, like she belonged there. Ellie ran right into her arms without hesitation. That part still haunts me. The way Ellie didn't even flinch. The woman must have said something to make her trust her. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Child abduction in Portland suburb. I didn't sleep for days. Police questioned me for hours. Standard procedure, they said, but I could see it in their eyes. They thought I had something to do with it. A custody dispute maybe, or a runaway mom situation. But I didn't. I hadn't even spoken to Ellie's mom, Melissa, in almost 3 years. And then came the call. Blocked number. A man's voice. Calm. Slow. Like every word was measured. "If you want your daughter alive," he said, "you will stop talking to the police." I froze. My throat went dry. "Who is this? Where's Ellie?" "You'll know soon," he said. "But if you contact law enforcement again, she dies. We are watching you." Then he hung up. That night, I sat on the floor of her room. Her little stuffed penguin was on her bed. The night lights still glowed faintly in the corner. I remember whispering to it, begging whoever was out there, God, the universe, anyone, to just bring her home. The next morning, I got an email. No sender name, just an address that looked random, like it was generated by a bot. The subject line said, "We have your daughter. She is unharmed. For now." The body of the email had one line. "If you want her back, prove you are worthy." There was a link below it. I didn't click it at first. I just stared at it. I called the cops again, but stopped halfway through dialing. Those words echoed in my head. "If you contact law enforcement again, she dies." I clicked it. It opened to a black screen with white text. No logos. No sound. Just text. "You will follow our instructions exactly. Any attempt to trace this will end your daughter's life. Do you understand?" Then a message box appeared. I typed yes. "Good," it said. "Your daughter has been chosen for a sacred purpose. Do not interfere. If you truly love her, you will help us prepare." That's when I knew it wasn't some ransom thing. This wasn't about money. It was something darker. Something that made my skin crawl just reading it. The next instruction told me to drive to a specific gas station 30 miles north. It was 11 p.m. I didn't even think. I grabbed my keys, jumped in my truck, and went. When I got there, I saw an envelope taped to the back of the air pump. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a Polaroid photo. Ellie, sitting on a cot in a dimly lit room. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying, but she was alive. The photo had one thing written across the bottom in black marker. "Obedience keeps her safe." There was another note inside. It said, "You will receive further instructions. Burn this after reading." I did. My hands were trembling so bad I nearly set my sleeve on fire. Over the next week, they made me do things. Small at first. Leave packages at drop-off points, follow strangers, deliver envelopes to people I didn't know. I didn't understand any of it, but each time I hesitated, they'd send another picture of Ellie, sometimes with new bruises, sometimes just sitting there, looking emptier. It wasn't until the 7th task that I realized what they were doing. They weren't just testing obedience, they were testing devotion. Like a ritual. Like they wanted me to prove I was willing to follow blindly. And the last message I got before everything fell apart said something that made my blood run cold. You've proven your faith, Ryan. Now it's time to join her. That's when I knew I wasn't just dealing with kidnappers. It was a cult. A real, organized, psychotic cult. And I was running out of time. When I say I was losing my mind, I mean it literally. I hadn't slept properly in days. Every sound outside made me jump. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach turned to acid. The cops still thought I was involved somehow. So I couldn't even go to them without risking Ellie's life. I was stuck between obeying a faceless group of psychos and watching my daughter slowly disappear through the pictures they sent me. The next message came 3 nights later. Another anonymous email. The subject line just said, "She's waiting." There was a video this time. I almost didn't open it, but the thumbnail had her in it. Ellie sitting on a cot, wearing the same dress from the last photo. A man's voice off camera said, "Say hi to Daddy." Ellie looked up, her face streaked with tears. "Daddy, please come get me," she whispered before the video cut off. Then a line of text appeared. "She cries for you. Don't make her cry again. You know what to do." Attached below was a photo of an address scrawled on a napkin, 1178 Sawmill Road. It was almost an hour from my place, deep in the woods near Mount Hood. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed a flashlight, my dad's old revolver, and started driving. I don't remember most of that drive. My hands were clenched on the steering wheel so tight they left marks. The whole time, I was praying, out loud, over and over, "Please be alive, baby. Please hold on." Sawmill Road wasn't really a road. It was a narrow dirt path cutting through miles of dense trees. My truck barely fit. Around a mile in, I saw a wooden gate with strange symbols burned into it. Circles, triangles, lines that almost looked like eyes. There was a lock, but it wasn't closed. Like they were expecting me. I pushed it open and drove through. After a few hundred feet, I saw lights ahead, dim, yellowish, like from oil lamps. There was a cabin, old, half-rotted, with boards nailed haphazardly across the windows. I killed the engine and listened. Nothing. Just the wind and the faint crackle of fire somewhere inside. I kept the gun low and crept toward the front door. My heart was hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. Inside, it smelled like damp wood and metal, like rust and rot. The walls were covered in drawings. Circles with symbols inside them. Words written in what looked like red paint. But deep down, I knew it wasn't paint. Then I heard it. A small sound from the back room. A whimper. I followed it. My throat was so tight I could barely breathe. The door was half open, and there she was, Ellie, tied to a chair, her wrists raw from rope. Her hair was tangled, her cheeks streaked with dirt. "Ellie," I whispered, barely holding it together. She looked up, and the second she saw me, she gasped, like she couldn't believe I was real. "Daddy." I ran to her, untied the ropes, pulled her into my arms. I could feel her shaking. She was whispering something over and over, but her voice was so quiet I couldn't make it out. Then I finally heard it. "They're coming." I didn't even get a chance to ask what she meant before I heard footsteps outside. Multiple. Heavy. Slow. I grabbed her hand, and we ran through the back door. The cold air hit us hard, but I didn't stop. I didn't even think. I just ran. The forest was pitch black except for the flashlight in my hand bouncing wildly with each step. Behind us, voices. Dozens of them. Chanting. I couldn't make out the words, but it wasn't English. It was rhythmic, like some kind of ritual. "Daddy, I'm scared," she cried. "I know, baby, I know, just keep running." We stumbled through mud and roots, branches slapping my face, my lungs burning. Then I saw headlights through the trees. The truck. We were close. I lifted her into the passenger seat, jumped in, and slammed on the gas. The wheels spun in the dirt before catching, throwing rocks and dust behind us. For a second, I thought we'd made it. Then a man appeared in front of the truck. I hit the brakes, barely missing him. He just stood there, tall, bald, wearing a long dark coat. His eyes glowed in the headlights like an animal's. He lifted his hand and pointed right at Ellie. Before I could react, someone smashed the driver's window. Hands grabbed at me, pulling, clawing. Ellie screamed. I swung the revolver wildly, fired once. Someone fell back, screaming. I hit the gas again, the truck jerking forward and slamming into the man standing ahead. He went down. We sped out of there like hell itself was behind us. I didn't stop driving until we hit the highway. Ellie was crying so hard she could barely breathe. I pulled over and just held her, both of us shaking. "It's okay," I kept saying. "You're safe now. I've got you." But she kept whispering the same thing. "They said you'd come. They said you'd bring the light." I didn't understand. I thought she was just scared, delirious maybe. I promised her it was over. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw something that froze me solid. The same symbols from the cabin. Those weird circular markings. They were drawn on the back of her hand. In red. "Ellie, who did that to you?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just looked out the window, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. It sounded like a prayer, or maybe a chant. I told myself I'd figure it out once we got home. Once I got her cleaned up. Once she slept. But when we finally reached my place and I carried her inside, she looked up at me with those big, glassy eyes and said something that made my blood run cold. "They said if I leave, the dark will follow you instead." I laughed it off, trying to keep her calm. But when I turned to close the door, I noticed something carved into the wood outside. A circle, with an eye inside it. And underneath it, in jagged letters, "The light has found its vessel." I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Ellie. She lay curled up in my bed, clutching her penguin, eyes open like she was afraid to blink. Every time I moved, she flinched. Every time a floorboard creaked, she whispered, "They're here." I told myself it was trauma. That whatever those lunatics had done to her had scrambled her sense of safety. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The house felt wrong, like there was something else inside it with us. Around 3 a.m., I went to get her a glass of water. When I came back, she was sitting straight up, staring at the wall. "Ellie," I whispered. She turned to me slowly. "They're waiting for you, Daddy." My stomach twisted. "Who's waiting?" She pointed to the window. I turned. Nothing but darkness. But then I noticed something faint. Symbols. Drawn in condensation on the glass, just like the ones from the cabin. Circles, triangles, and an eye. I wiped them away with my sleeve. But a few seconds later, they reappeared. That's when I started to lose it. I checked the locks 3 times. Closed every curtain. Even barricaded the front door with a chair. I sat up in the living room until sunrise, the revolver on my lap, watching the door like a man possessed. The next day, I called my friend Tyler. He's a private investigator, ex-cop. We'd worked together years ago on some construction gig. I told him the basics. That Ellie had been taken by a group, that I got her back, but I thought they were still watching us. He didn't buy the cult part at first, but he came over anyway. When he walked in and saw the carvings on my door, the look on his face changed. He crouched down, touched the symbol, and frowned. "This isn't gang stuff," he said. "Looks ritualistic. You sure you don't recognize it?" I shook my head. "They called themselves something about the light. That's all I know." He pulled out his phone and took pictures. "All right, I'll run some checks. Maybe there's chatter about it somewhere online." Then he turned to Ellie. "Hey, kiddo, you remember what they called the place they took you?" She didn't answer at first. Then she whispered, "The sanctuary." Tyler and I locked eyes. "You hear that?" I said. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's not good." After he left, I spent the whole day trying to distract Ellie. Cartoons, her favorite snacks, even building pillow forts like we used to. For a while, it almost felt normal. She even smiled once. But that night, everything fell apart again. I woke up around midnight to the sound of humming. Soft, rhythmic, like a lullaby. It was coming from Ellie's room. I walked in quietly, thinking she was singing in her sleep. But when I got closer, I froze. She was sitting on the floor, her eyes open, staring at the wall. She was drawing on it, with her finger. "Ellie." She didn't look at me. "They said I have to finish it," she murmured. I switched on the light, and my stomach dropped. The wall was covered in symbols. Dozens of them. The same circles and eyes from before, drawn in what looked like red crayon, until I realized it wasn't. Her fingertip was bleeding. I rushed to her, grabbed her hand, wrapped it in a towel. "Jesus, Ellie, what are you doing?" "They said it's for the light to find me," she said calmly, like it was obvious. "They said you have to help." That's when I lost it. "No, baby. Nobody's finding you. You're safe here. Do you understand me? They're gone." She blinked at me like she didn't know what I was talking about. I took her to the ER the next morning. Told the nurse she'd cut her hand on glass. They bandaged her up, gave me a weird look when they saw the wall drawings, but didn't say much. When we got home, I found Tyler waiting on my porch. He looked pale. Ryan, he said, we need to talk. He'd been digging through police reports, missing persons cases, and deep web threads. Apparently, the Sanctuary of the Light wasn't some fringe thing. It was real. A cult that started in the late 80s around Northern California. A mix of New Age nonsense and apocalyptic prophecy. They believed in something called the vessel, a pure soul, chosen to carry the light of their God into the next world. Tyler scrolled through his phone and showed me a photo, some old newspaper clipping. The same symbols, the same damn circle with the eye, and under it, the headline, 7 children found dead after cult ritual in abandoned church, leaders missing. I felt sick. He kept talking, but all I could hear was blood rushing in my ears. They pick kids, he said, usually under 10. They think purity fades with age. If Ellie was taken by them, they weren't just kidnapping her, Ryan. They were preparing her. Preparing her for what? I demanded. He hesitated. A sacrifice. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the ground fell out from under me. That night, I barely let Ellie out of my sight. Every sound, every shadow outside made my skin crawl. Around 2 a.m., she started whispering again. I thought she was dreaming until I realized her eyes were open. They said you'll join me soon, she murmured. My voice cracked. Who said that? She pointed to the corner of the room. There was nothing there, but as I turned the light on, I saw something new, etched into the wood just above her bed. The same circle, the same eye, but this time, it wasn't drawn in blood or paint. It was burned in. Tyler came by again the next morning, saw the mark, and just stared at it. This is getting out of hand, he muttered. You need to go? Somewhere far. Until we figure out how they're tracking you. So I packed everything we could fit into the truck, clothes, food, Ellie's toys, and we left that afternoon. I didn't tell anyone where. As we drove out of town, Ellie sat silently in the back seat, staring out the window. Every few minutes, she'd whisper something under her breath. I couldn't make it out, but it sounded like the same chant from that night in the woods. Ellie, I said softly, you don't have to say that anymore. You're safe now. She finally looked up at me in the rearview mirror. And in the smallest voice, she said, it's not me saying it, Daddy. It's them. We drove for hours that night. I didn't have a destination, just an instinct to keep moving. Every time I checked the mirrors, I half expected to see headlights following us. Ellie hadn't said a word since we left. She just stared out the window, eyes vacant, lips moving in silent repetition. I caught bits of it sometimes, fragments of that same haunting chant. It wasn't English, but it sounded deliberate. Memorized. Around 2 a.m., I pulled into a rundown roadside motel near Bend. The kind of place where the no vacancy sign flickers even when half the rooms are empty. I got a room with 2 beds and carried Ellie inside. She looked pale, exhausted, like she hadn't slept in weeks. Baby, you need rest, I said. We'll figure this out in the morning. She nodded, climbed into bed, and turned toward the wall. I sat on the other bed, scrolling through my phone, trying to find anything about the Sanctuary of the Light. Most of what I found was old forum threads and conspiracy blogs. People claiming the cult had resurfaced, that they'd gone underground and rebuilt themselves in smaller cells. Others said they'd merged with tech money, which sounded insane, but at that point, everything felt insane. I finally dozed off around 5 a.m. When I woke up, Ellie wasn't in her bed. I shot up, my heart slamming in my chest. The bathroom was empty. The door was still locked from the inside, but the curtains were open. That's when I saw her, standing outside by the parking lot, barefoot, wearing her nightgown. I ran out and grabbed her shoulders. Ellie, what the hell are you doing? She blinked up at me like she'd just woken from a dream. They were calling me. Who? She pointed to the tree line across the street. The fog was thick, but I swear I saw movement. Figures, barely visible, slipping back into the mist. I didn't wait to find out who they were. I threw Ellie in the truck and peeled out of there, tires screaming. By noon, I called Tyler. I didn't even say hello. They found us. He cursed under his breath. Where are you now? Heading east. Somewhere off Route 26. All right, listen. I think I know someone who can help. He gave me an address outside of Baker City. A woman named Mara. Said she was a former cult member who got out years ago. She's quiet, paranoid. But if anyone knows how these people operate, it's her. We drove the rest of the day and got there by sunset. The house was isolated, a small cabin surrounded by miles of pine and silence. When I knocked, The door opened just an inch. A pair of wary eyes stared back at me. "You're Ryan?" a woman's voice said. "Yeah, Tyler sent me." She opened the door. She was maybe late 40s, hair gray at the edges, face lined like she hadn't smiled in decades. Her eyes, though, they were sharp. Too sharp. She looked at Ellie, then back at me. "She's the one they took?" I nodded. Mara sighed and motioned us inside. The cabin smelled like sage and dust. Books and papers were scattered everywhere. Symbols drawn on pages, newspaper clippings, burnt photographs. She sat down and lit a cigarette. "You're lucky she's alive. The sanctuary doesn't usually return their chosen." "Chosen for what?" I asked. Mara exhaled smoke, her voice steady. "They believe the world is dying, spiritually, that the light must inhabit a pure vessel to guide humanity into the next cycle. It's all twisted nonsense, but they believe it completely." She looked at Ellie. She was supposed to be that vessel. Ellie shifted closer to me. "They said the light is already inside me." Mara frowned. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Ellie hesitated, then whispered, "I see them when I close my eyes. They talk to me." Mara's expression darkened. She walked over to a shelf and grabbed a small, old-looking book. "When they choose a vessel," she said, "they perform something called the infusion. It's meant to bind the child's soul to their God's essence. But it's not magic. It's psychological manipulation, sleep deprivation, chanting, isolation. It breaks them." She crouched in front of Ellie. "Did they make you drink anything, honey? Anything strange?" Ellie nodded slowly. "It tasted like metal." Mara's face went pale. She looked at me. "They used the serum." "What serum?" "They think it purifies the vessel. But it's poison, mixed with hallucinogens and trace heavy metals. It makes them obedient, easier to control. It can cause visions, voices, even changes in behavior." I felt sick. "You're saying they drugged my daughter?" "I'm saying they infected her," Mara said. "Mind and body." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ellie whispered, "They said I have to finish the ritual or the light dies." Mara stood up. "You need to get her away from anywhere they can find you. No phones, no internet. They'll track signals. I can give you supplies, but you have to leave by morning." That night, I couldn't sleep again. I sat in the chair near Ellie's bed, watching her toss and turn. Around 3 a.m., she suddenly sat upright, gasping for air. "Ellie, it's okay," I said, reaching for her. But she wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were locked on the corner of the room. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They're here." I turned, and for a split second, I swear I saw something. A shadow, humanoid, flickering like a bad projection. And then it was gone. I scooped her up and ran out into the night. The cold hit me like knives, but I didn't care. I just kept running to the truck. I slammed the door shut and locked it, breathing hard. Ellie sat in the passenger seat, silent again. Then she turned to me, voice calm and eerily steady. "They said you can't run anymore, Daddy." The radio flickered on by itself, static. Then a voice, distorted, deep, familiar. "You've proven your devotion, Ryan. Now, return her. The light must complete its purpose." I tried to turn it off. The dial wouldn't move. Ellie reached out and placed her small hand on mine. "It's okay," she said softly. "It doesn't hurt when you stop fighting it." And in that moment, for the first time since this started, I saw it. Just for an instant. Her eyes. They weren't blue anymore. They glowed faint gold. I don't remember the drive after that. My mind was blank, white noise in human form. I just kept going until the sun started rising. Ellie was quiet beside me, her head leaning against the window, that eerie calm still frozen on her face. The glow in her eyes was gone. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe exhaustion and panic had finally pushed me past the line. But when I stopped at a gas station in some nowhere town near Idaho, the cashier froze the second he saw Ellie. I didn't think much of it until he whispered, "Sir, is that paint on her hands?" I looked down. Her fingernails were caked with something dark, dried, and flaky. It wasn't mud. It wasn't paint. It was the same color I'd seen smeared across the walls of that cabin. I grabbed her hand gently. "Ellie, where did this come from?" She smiled faintly. "It's from the light, Daddy. It never leaves." I cleaned her hands in the sink of the tiny gas station bathroom, the smell of iron clinging to the air. I told myself it had to be dirt. It had to, but it didn't wash away easily. That's when I realized there was something written on her forearm, faint, like someone had drawn it while she slept. 3 words, "The vessel lives." By the time I walked back to the car, my hands were trembling. I called Tyler again, straight to voicemail. I tried twice more before giving up. Then I noticed something else. My phone's GPS kept rerouting me to one location, no matter where I tried to go. Sawmill Road. I threw the phone out the window. We drove north, cutting through smaller highways, barely stopping. My plan, if you could call it that, was to find a small town, maybe a church or a clinic, anyone who might believe me. But every mile that passed, Ellie seemed different. Not scared, not broken, just distant, detached. "Do you remember your favorite movie?" I asked, just to hear her voice. She tilted her head, thinking, "The one with the talking animals?" "Yeah, that one. You made me watch it like 50 times." Her lips curled into a tiny smile. For a second, she looked like my Ellie again. But then she said, "They said movies are lies. That this world isn't real." My throat went dry. "Who said that?" She looked at me, and her voice changed, softer, lower. "The ones who live in the dark." I wanted to pull over right then, scream, cry, do anything. But something in me just froze. I couldn't let her see how scared I was. That night, we stopped near a rest area by the Columbia River. The air was cold, the sky endless. I wrapped Ellie in a blanket in the back seat, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "We'll be okay, baby. I promise." I stayed up again, watching the road, trying to think. But around 2 a.m., I heard her humming that same chant again. I turned, and she was sitting up, eyes closed, swaying slightly. I reached for her shoulder. "Ellie." Her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist with a strength that wasn't hers. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly again. And a voice came out of her mouth that wasn't her own. "You were chosen too, Ryan. You just don't see it yet." I yanked my hand away, heart pounding. "What the hell are you talking about?" "The light doesn't die," she said, her voice echoing, layered. "It moves. From vessel to vessel." Then she blinked, and just like that, she was Ellie again. Confused, crying. "Daddy, what's wrong?" I held her tight, whispering, "It's okay, baby. It's okay." But inside, I was cracking open. By sunrise, I made a decision. I drove straight back to Mara's cabin. I didn't care what it took. I needed answers. When I got there, though, the place was empty. The door was open, swinging in the wind. The inside was trashed, papers scattered, shelves broken. And on the wall, burned deep into the wood, "Return the vessel to the light." I felt my legs go weak. That's when I heard it, faint crying from behind the house. I ran out back and froze. Mara was there, on her knees. Her hands were tied, her throat slashed open. But her eyes were still open, staring right at me. And carved into her chest were the same 3 words again. "The vessel lives." I stumbled backward, falling to my knees, while rising in my throat. Ellie stood a few feet away, staring at the body without emotion. "They said she betrayed the light," she whispered. I grabbed her shoulders. "Stop saying they. There's no they. It's over." But her face didn't change. Her voice went flat. "It's never over." That's when I heard engines in the distance, multiple vehicles, headlights cutting through the trees, voices chanting. I scooped her up and bolted for the truck. As I threw it in reverse, figures emerged from the woods, dozens of them, holding torches, their faces painted white, symbols etched into their foreheads. They surrounded us, chanting louder and louder. I slammed on the gas and plowed through the line. Someone hit the windshield. I didn't look back. I just kept driving until the trees disappeared and the sky opened up again. We didn't stop until the next morning. Ellie was quiet the whole time. No crying, no talking, just silence. When I finally pulled over near a rest stop, I turned to her and said, "We're going to the FBI, Ellie. I don't care what they say. They can't hurt us anymore." She looked at me with that same unsettling calm. "They already did, Daddy." Then she leaned closer, so close I could feel her breath on my ear, and whispered, "They're inside you now, too." Something in me snapped. I grabbed her and held her so tight I thought I might crush her. "You're my daughter. You're not theirs. Do you hear me?" She didn't answer. She just laid her head on my chest. When I finally looked down again, she was asleep, peaceful, her tiny hand gripping my shirt. For the first time in weeks, I let myself cry. That was a month ago. The FBI took her into protective custody after I turned everything over. The emails, the pictures, the symbols. They said they'd find the people responsible. But every agent who's come to talk to me since says the same thing. There's no trace of the sanctuary. No records. No cult. Nothing. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the humming again. That same chant. I tell myself it's just my mind replaying trauma. But last night, when I woke up, there was something on my mirror. Drawn in condensation. A circle. An eye. And underneath it, written in shaky handwriting that wasn't mine. The vessel lives. If you made it all the way to the end, thanks for sticking with me. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the story, consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like. It helps me share more stories like this. Thanks.